Hey everybody, hope you guys are healthy and safe. So this is my full review of the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. After using this phone for a whole week, I find the in-hand feel to be quite nice. It's slightly too big. It's not as comfortable in the hand as the smaller S21 Plus or the even smaller S21. But as someone who wants a big screen, I'm willing to put up with the slight compromises in comfort. This is a much more comfortable in-hand feel than say the iPhone 12 Pro Max because the phone's a little bit narrower and the sides are not completely flat with sharp corners. In fact, I think Samsung's figured out the perfect level of curvature for its screen. So the S21 screen is still curved, but it's relatively subtle, just enough that it still gives it a little bit of a visual flourish. In fact, I find the S21's completely flat panel to be a little bit boring and bland by comparison. But the curves are also not so dramatic that they distort colors on the side. It doesn't happen here. And also, you don't have to worry about accidental palm touches because it just doesn't happen. Speaking of this 6.8-inch display, as expected, this is a top-notch panel without the notch, get it? It gets super bright at 1500 nits and maxes out at a resolution of 1440 by 3200, and it refreshes up to 120 Hz. Now I think overall Xiaomi's 120 Hz panel still appears a little bit more fluid to my eyes than the S21 Ultras. I think it's just because Xiaomi's MIUI software just has more animations crammed into that 120 Hz panel. But still, the screen, everything still moves very smoothly. If you jump back to a 60 Hz panel like an iPhone 12 mini I have here, or like an LG Wing, animation just does not look as smooth as they do on the Galaxy S21 Ultra. So there's a small hole punch cutout housing a 40 megapixel selfie camera that takes pretty good selfies. And the in-display fingerprint sensor has been much improved over the last two versions I was using, the S20 Ultra and the Note 20 Ultra. The fingerprint sensor area is now 1.7 times bigger. That means your thumb can find the area a little bit easier. So this model I'm testing is the Snapdragon 888 model with 12 gigs of RAM. You can get up to 16 gigs of RAM if you buy the most expensive 512 gig storage variant, but 12 gigs of RAM is more than good enough. And Snapdragon 888, absolutely no issue whatsoever, whether it's gaming or filming using two different cameras or doing video editing directly on the phone via Power Director. So almost everything about this phone's hardware in terms of construction and components used, it's tip-top. It's like absolute best in the industry. This includes all the little things too. So the Wi-Fi modem in here supports Wi-Fi 6. I believe it's the first phone in the world to support this newest Wi-Fi technology. The Bluetooth in here is Bluetooth 5.2, that's also the newest version. And whether it's a USB connection or the memory, the RAM in here, it's all the latest version possible right now. So you notice that I said almost everything about this hardware is tip-top. That's because I'm a little bit disappointed with the charging speeds. There's a 5000 mAh battery in here, and it only charges wire with the included cable up to 25 watts or wirelessly at 15 watts. So that means it will still take over an hour to charge the phone from 0 to 100, and it's a little bit slow in my opinion. I'm used to using Xiaomi phones or OnePlus and Oppo phones that you just plug in the phone for 25 minutes and it's completely filled up. Now as for battery life, it's interesting. I find that almost every American reviewer say they can get 1.5 days with this phone, and that just has not been what I've been getting. Now this happens to me all the time. I find that every year when they review the latest iPhone or the latest Samsung Galaxy, their battery life is always a lot higher than what I get. I think maybe it's a combination of maybe Hong Kong cell towers require switching a lot more often, or maybe because I'm just like that obsessed with my phone that I use it more than all of them. But there's no way this phone can go 1.5 days for me basically. I'm still pretty satisfied with the battery life overall though. I would say from a full charge, the phone gives me about 4.5 hours to 5 hours of screen on time, and generally can go about like a 14-hour day and finish with about like 10% battery life left. Now as for cameras, there's a quad camera system here. You have an ultra wide angle camera, 12 megapixel, 108 megapixel main camera with a really large 1/1.33 inch sensor. You have a 10 megapixel periscope zoom lens that gets 10 times optical zoom. And then you have here an additional 10 megapixel, 3 times optical telephoto zoom lens that has a 70mm focal length. That's ideal for portraits. This sensor up here, if you're wondering, is a laser autofocus. Now all 4 cameras work very well. I'm particularly impressed by the 108 megapixel sensor because of the huge sensor. It can pull in so much light so that even at night you don't need to use night mode And I really like that natural depth of field that you get just from taking a normal picture because of the large sensor. You don't need to turn on portrait mode. And also this 108 megapixel camera doubles as a macro lens, and the results look pretty damn good. Now as for this 10 times periscope zoom lens, it is legit. It is probably the cleanest or second cleanest 10 times zoom pictures I've seen, along with the Huawei P40 Pro Plus, which also has a 10 times zoom lens. So I would say 10 times photo are perfectly sharp and usable for Instagram immediately. I would argue that even 20 times and even 30 times still look really respectable. Like you can still post it on Instagram and, you know, not have a photo that looks like it's very messy. Now you can zoom all up to 100 times, and at 100 times I admit, okay, then you start losing a lot of details, photos turn out a little bit blurry, but just the fact that you can get so far, it can still help you in a pinch. Like for example, if I need to read a street sign or menu from really far. But the feature that really blows my mind with what Samsung is able to do is zoom lock. So basically, if you zoom beyond 30 times with the periscope zoom lens camera, the phone's AI will automatically lock onto a subject, and then at that point, the viewfinder remains stable. It no longer shakes very heavily, which is what you usually get when you zoom in really far with a smartphone camera. This is a game changer, and I think Huawei will have to catch up in this area, which they might with the Huawei P50 Pro, who knows. Now the 3 times optical telephoto lens has a 70mm focal length. That's ideal for portraits. So that means when you switch to portrait mode now, it automatically zooms in almost 3 times, so that's a little bit tight. You might have to back up a little bit anytime you want to take a portrait of someone sitting across from you, but the results are quite clean, and I find the depth of field to be relatively convincing. Portraits overall are pretty solid. Video performance is very good during the day. You have all these extra features like recording 4K 60 with every camera, or you can record up to 8K resolution with the main camera, and just stabilization, it's very good during the day, and as well as dynamic range. Like you can see if I shift between bright lights and dimmer areas, the phone adjusts itself quite well. Now at night, stabilization takes a slight hit. You get a little bit more of that micro jitter shakiness that has plagued Android phones for many years. In terms of nighttime videos, the iPhone 12 Pro Max still beats the S21 Ultra by a little bit. If I do have to complain about the camera, it's that zooming in and out when you're switching between lenses is still a very janky experience. So let's see, if I'm gonna go into 10x, I jump back out to 1. You see, it's just not a smooth transition. There's a little bit of a, you know, with an iPhone, zooming, it's really fluid. Like you can zoom in and out like that without any issues. Now the software here is mostly fine. This phone runs on Android 11 with Samsung's One UI 3.1 on top. One UI is mostly clean and very attractive looking now, much better than TouchWiz of years past. I don't like that you still have to cycle horizontally to go through the app tray instead of up and down like how Google does it. But for the most part, I'm fine with One UI 3.1, except some of Samsung's additional bloat software. So out of the box, the phone tries to get you to use Samsung Pay. And the way to trigger Samsung Pay is to swipe up from the bottom of the screen. So needless to say, this gesture for Samsung Pay is really annoying, and I turn it off immediately. So in my opinion, the Galaxy S21 Ultra is the apex Slab smartphone right now. This is the most well-rounded device. There isn't a single major flaw with this phone. It does everything at nearly the best that a Slab smartphone can do right now. However, I do think for $1,200, the S21 Ultra is still a little bit expensive because the Xiaomi Mi 11, which I mentioned earlier, sells in China for just about $650, so it's almost half the price. And the Xiaomi Mi 11 screen is probably almost as good, maybe like 99% as good as this screen. It runs on the same processor. And the main camera is probably just as good as the main camera here too. It's also a 108 megapixel sensor. Where the S21 Ultra beats the Xiaomi Mi 11, it's focal length. That phone doesn't have a zoom lens at all, so this phone can zoom much better. But I'm pretty sure Xiaomi is going to release a Mi 11 Pro sometime in the next month, and that phone will have a zoom lens too. And yeah, it'll be a little bit more expensive, but it's still going to be cheaper than this phone. So I can't say this is the best value, but if you have the money to spend and you want the best possible phone, this is still it right now. Plus, there are also a lot of additional Samsung features that people might enjoy. Like for example, I really like that if you have the Galaxy Buds Pro or the Galaxy Buds Live, you can connect to your Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra and record videos using the earbuds as your wireless mic, and it actually works quite well. I also like Samsung DeX. You can connect this wirelessly to a smart TV or a monitor, or plug in via USB-C and have a whole desktop experience. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this phone also supports S Pen. You have to buy it separately, so I honestly, personally, I don't think it's worth it because I don't think a stylus is that necessary. But if you do need to jot notes often, or you like to sketch, you can just pick up an S Pen, and this phone offers you another usage experience that like an iPhone or Xiaomi Mi 11 does not. So there's definitely a heck lot to like with the Galaxy S21 Ultra. So anyway, that's about it for this review of the Galaxy S21 Ultra. This is the Apex Slab smartphone right now. Thanks for watching.